Hello, I'm Brandy Agerbeck of LooseTooth.com, and I am going to give you a chart tour. So this chart in question here in my studio in Chicago is from the Agerbeck Method, which is my 90-day visual thinking online course. And this drawing was actually made for day one. And it's talking about a student or participant's success factors. So I just want to give a spin around the chart to talk about some of the choices I made. So one of the things is, which you may notice off the bat, is that line down the middle, the horizontal line down the middle, is not even, and that's okay. It's funny, I drew it and I'm like, oh, this is all just a little off kilter. And that's just what happens when you're drawing live and drawing large. Now, certainly when I photograph this chart and crop it, I could always just tip it a little bit and then we've got it even Stevens. But as we can see at the top of the chart, when we do this work, we are focusing on process over product. And, that line works perfectly fine, even if it is a little off. So in this chart, we've got a lot of idea shapers going on. We have got scale, certainly, the pyramid, where we're using different sizes of text to delineate what is a main idea. In this case, the scale is shown not just with the physical size, but also that it's all caps, versus the main idea here versus the points under that, which is drawn in lowercase. And then even smaller, third level information, we're using scale to go from level 1, 2, and 3 within the cluster. So we can understand that this is a cluster or a grouping because we've got a couple different things going on. We certainly have proximity, that the fact that these ideas, this grouping is all sort of huddled together and separate from the materials grouping here, or the time grouping here, or the space grouping up here. So one thing is simply by clustering those ideas together, we understand, if we back up, that we've got 4 major clusters on the page. We understand this because of the spacing. We also understand it because there's consistent choices made throughout the chart. So this level of information, these 4 main ideas, are all drawn and treated in the same way. We also understand it as a cluster because we use these containers and connectors to what I like to call blobs and stems. So this blob-shaped container is used, again, consistently across the 4. We use the blobs and we use the stems, and we do one level of stem from the main idea to the first layer of subpoints, and then we use a different kind of connector between this first layer and the second layer. So if you look at other groupings, you'll see the same type of connectors are used. So again, we're making consistent choices across the chart to be able to understand the patterns within it. Color-wise, we're mostly working with a trio with one accent color. So the lightest color in the trio is the yellow, that beautiful egg yolk yellow that I love so much. And as I noticed on the video, matches my eyeglasses very well. And we're using this olive green as the medium tone, and then black for the highest contrast color. And then we've got red used in just a few places to really highlight a specific idea. For instance, we're using the red to X out a couple ideas, and the red is also nice because it kind of shows this, not conflict exactly, but the contrast between 2 choices, with the verses here and the verses down here. So again, very consistent color choices across the chart to help create the patterns in the chart. You'll also see that the fill is being used. So here, along that line, so I'd actually drawn this entire thing, and then I went, hey, I don't have a title on this, which is something that often happens with me because I'm always prioritizing the content and making sure that I've got all the guts of the drawing, and sometimes I will defer and not put a title up because I want to make sure I have enough space. But once I had basically filled in all the content that I wanted to share in this video, I realized I should add a title, and then I had this gorgeous space along that central line down the middle of the page, or across the middle of the page with that slightly tipsy horizontal line. So in large block letters in my lightest color, I wrote the title, which is success factors. The full title is your success factors. So I labeled success factors in large block letters. The lightest color works in this case because the scale of the letters are so large. So normally I would not draw text in on my lightest color of my trio, but because they're these giant block letters, it works. It's legible. But also, one thing that's nice is it kind of creates a different layer. Now the fill, this is that cross hatching that you see across all these letters, was done to really help create a shape on the page. So if I back up, you'll see that this drawing is full of shapes and lines, but they're lines. That's the only thing on the page that kind of reads as a filled in field of color because of the consistent cross hatching across it. So that kind of helps distinguish the title from any of the other visual information on the page. And when I went close, you may have noticed, see if this will pick up in the light, that in this case I actually penciled out my cloud shape around the title so that when I came in and did my cross hatching, it would actually follow the shape well. So that was not freehand. And also you'll see when I do any kind of cross hatching, I'm working to make everything go in the same direction. Actually not working so hard because I'm left-handed. And one thing that's very easy as being left-handed is this making strokes at this angle. So almost always you'll see the fill or the cross hatching in my charts going that angle because I'm just working with the natural sort of fulcrum in my body. So I'm using if you can see it, my elbow as the fulcrum. And let's see, what else do we have on this page? I think those are the main points. The main thing is that we are using consistent choices across. We're using the pyramid, we're using scale, that we're using some fill to really help that title pop. Yes, there's an overall structure here, and it's all built around the person. So definitely very specifically placed the four main ideas with purposeful placement on the person. So here we have our stand-in for ourselves, the sort of figure looking down at their page. So this is not so much about something like graphic facilitation where it's about the group. This is very much about the individual meaning making of visual thinking. So the posture of the figure it's the space between this person and their drawing. And so we have that posture, we have that person. But again, I place the four main points purposefully. Mindset, not surprisingly, across the mind. Materials, connected to the pencil that they're holding. Time, I added a little clock on the desk here. And then space is sort of the space here, kind of behind the desk. So the area behind that person. Also, you will see here, again, hopefully this will pick up in the light. I had, the very first thing I drew was this head shape. And first I made it look way too oval. It looked much more like a quote bubble instead of a head. And I kept on looking at it and I'm like, man, I just taped this giant sheet of paper on the wall. And the very first thing I drew was kind of wonky and wasn't what I wanted. So instead of wasting all that paper, I simply used mailing labels, blank mailing labels, to cover up that line. So hopefully you can kind of see there that line, the little shadow of that line. Here next to it is a whole slew of mailing labels because when I wrote space, I originally had one spot all the time versus mobile kit right there. And then when I realized I wanted to place this idea of mental space between space and mindset, that guy was in the way. So very simply, I used mailing labels to cover that idea up so that I could then move mobile kit over here and connect those two ideas. So that is a chart tour for your success factors. You may be watching this in the Agerbeck Method. If so, hello. I hope you're having a great time here. And if you are not watching this in the Agerbeck Method, you can always check out the course at theagerbeckmethod.com. But again, just to recap, which idea shapers we see in this chart, we have got the pyramid, where we're using scale to create hierarchy between ideas. We've got the containers around these main 4 ideas. We've got connectors bridging different levels of information. We have got, we've got the trio, again, with these, using these 3 colors, the yellow, the green, and the black. In this case, there is the accent. You could call that the flag, so it's because it's pulling our focus and highlighting a couple items on the page. We also have the fill with the cross-hatching here, and we definitely have the cluster and the buffer. So the cluster helps us see these groupings, and the buffer is the space that helps us, the white space of the page that gives the drawing breathing room and lets us see what those 4 groupings are, because there's nice big spaces around it. And I may be forgetting a idea shaper or 2, but hopefully in this chart tour you can see how these different ideas all fit together and work in one big drawing. So thank you so much for watching.